Hi, I'm Pete. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my workshop. This is the final video in my series on how to build a trestle table. I hope you enjoyed this series of videos, and if you do, please remember to hit like and please remember to subscribe. Now, let's get started. In the first video of this series, we concentrated on building the tabletop. Video 2 focused on the legs, base assembly. In this final video, we're going to complete the build. The first step is to build a stretcher, which will incorporate Tusked Tenon Joints for stability. I'll be milling some 2x8 white oak for the stretcher. I joint, rip, and plane the stock to get it to the dimensions required for the project. After multiple passes through the planer, the stretcher is the right dimension for the mortise. Now I cut it to length at the miter saw. To make the tenons, I make a template from 1/4-inch plywood. Once I'm satisfied with the fit, I attach the template to the workpiece with double-sided tape. I then use a router to form the tenons. I use the table saw to square up the shoulders. This will ensure a nice tight fit against the base. A little cleanup with the chisels, and let's check for fit. It's critical to have a nice tight fit. Installation will be easier after we get done sanding. With the stretcher installed, I'm not happy with the overall dimension. So I decide to reduce its dimension at the table saw. Once I'm happy with the dimension, it's time to move on to cutting the Tusked Tenon joints. I'll be utilizing a Tusked Tenon joint for this table because my client requested that the table be easily disassembled for storage. I start by milling the boards to make the wedges. The wedges will need to be milled to 1/3 the thickness of the stretcher, or 1/2 inch. Multiple passes at the thickness planer get us to the 1/2 inch thickness. I use a compass to lay out the wedge's 5-degree angle. Once I lay out the shape, I cut out the wedges at the bandsaw and cut the length at the miter saw. I use a router to cut the mortises for the wedges. This takes multiple passes with the plunge router. With the mortise cut, it's now time to square up the edges to accommodate the wedges. Here's where some good chiseling skills and some sharp chisels would come in handy. Unfortunately, I have neither, so I make do with what I've got. Not the prettiest mortise, but let's see if it works. This Tusked Tenon joint holds everything together firm. Now that the table's main components are completed, it's time for all the final details. I decide to add decorative edges to the stretcher and legs using the router. With the decorative bits completed, it's now time to install the C-channel in the tabletop. I take multiple passes with the router to get to the right depth. The C-channel is held in place with threaded inserts and screws. Once all the inserts are in place, I do a test fit of the C-channel. The C-channel's elongated holes allow for expansion of the tabletop. With the C-channel complete, the next step is to plug the screw holes on the base. The plugs were cut from leftover scraps from building the table base. I glue and hammer the plugs in place. and I try my best to make sure the grain lines up. Once the glue sets, I trim the plugs down with my Japanese saw. Now it's time for a final sanding of all pieces before finishing. I applied the stain that was specified by the client. The color is gunstock made by Varathane. We wipe on the stain following the grain direction. We also make sure to wipe off excess stain before it dries on the wood. I'll let the stain set overnight before applying the protective finish. I use a tack rag to remove any dust that settled overnight. I now begin to apply the protective finish. The table will be located on a covered 3-season patio, so I'm applying 4 coats of water-based spar urethane with a satin finish. I sanded lightly in between the first 2 coats using 220 grit sandpaper. I allowed 2 hours of dry time in between each coat. Once the final coat is dry, it's time for some final details, like installing the seat channel. I make sure the screws aren't so tight that they'll restrict movement of the tabletop. The table will be on an uneven patio surface, so I decide to add some leveling feet. The feet provide an added benefit of elevating the table above any standing water. With the leveling feet installed, the table is now complete and ready for delivery. And here's the completed table at its new home. My client is very happy with the final product. This was a fun and rewarding project. I hope you guys enjoyed watching the videos as much as I enjoyed building this table. Thanks again for stopping by, and thanks for watching. I'll have more videos posted soon. See you then.